All right, welcome everybody to episode 85 of the Fuel Pod. Mikey, we got a crap ton of stuff to go through, but I don't think it'll take that long. I think we'll soar right through it. So,
We'll see how it goes. What do you want to talk about?
well, a big shocker here, but I want to talk about the Scuderia Ferrari.
Oh, that's
So,
amazing. Wow. I can
yeah,
almost
yeah,
hear Gomer Pyle back there in the background. Surprise,
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 yeah.
surprise.
So this week was a big week. Not so obviously we haven't started racing yet, but was a big week as far as teams getting their cars out on the road, and not the road, the track. Everybody kind of at their little home courses to test out their new cars, and obviously fans were out in droves hanging off the chain link fences, trying to get pictures and photos and video. Um, we had some that were more memorable than others, but what I really want to talk about is, year in and year out, especially if you're a Ferrari fan. So all you Tifosi out there that are with me, we get let down a lot, but we seldom ever go into a season where Ferrari is super excited about their chances. And this is a year where they are. And I think a lot of that has to do with prep work and the fact that they did hire the right guy in Freddie Vassar. And, he did some crazy, unorthodox things this year, like us finding out that he used free practices during this past season to test out the stuff that they were going to be doing with the 2024 car. And I'm sure that's not unheard of in Formula One, but that is a cool way to go. And you also got Charles Leclerc, who's typically Mr. King Pessimism, super optimistic about their car this year, which is also odd. So there's a lot of weird things involved in this. And then we've got, of course, and I want to talk about this more later, but the fact that Carlos Sainz is leaving and Lewis Hamilton is coming in. And Freddie talked about, hey, I'm getting a lot of questions. Why did you announce so early? And this is a really cool answer from a management standpoint. He's like, listen, I didn't want distractions during the season. So basically, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off now. And that way we can stay totally focused on 2024 because that news is done, right? And he also said that calling Carlos Sainz to let him know was probably one of the toughest things he's ever done in his life, because Carlos has done great for that team. And obviously he's my favorite of their two drivers, so it kind of sucks for me. But taking that out of it, taking the bias out of it, I still think, like Freddie said, I think he will drive until the last corner of the last race as a Ferrari driver. He's not one of those guys. I think he's going to phone it in on the last 2 or 3 races. Now, if the roles were reversed and it was Leclerc, I think he'd phone this whole season in. And I think that goes to the moral fiber of a Carlos Sainz versus a Charles Leclerc. And I could be totally wrong. Absolutely wrong. But, I feel like Sainz is more of a student of the sport, and he pays it its due respect. So we'll talk about him more in a minute. But yeah, really excited for this 24 car. Oddly enough, I think they took a lot of steam off of the fact that their hypercar won 24-hour Le Mans. I think Freddie looked into that team and said, what did you guys do that really got you there? What took you over the hump? And obviously 2 totally different cars, but taking some of those best practices, and we've seen it in our personal lives and our work lives and all those things, taking best practices from one activity can also help you in a totally different activity. So I think it's one of those things where I'm looking forward to this year. I'm going in it with cautious optimism. Obviously, you can't be a Ferrari fan and just go, balls out from the jump. Be like, we're going to win it all. And there's still, I think, a huge gap to Red Bull, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, or here in a little bit after whatever you're wanting to go to next. But man, that's what I wanted to talk about. I'm really excited this year, and I think my record's clear that I'm hardly ever excited. I want them to win every year. I don't ever go into a season thinking they're going to win it all. I'm not going into this one thinking they're going to win it all. Can they challenge this year? I think so. And I'll get to why whenever we get to that. But what do you got to talk about, man?
Yeah.
What are you going
Well, hey, let me say a couple of things about Ferrari, and you're right. You said that about the hypercar winning Le Mans. I think they got some mojo off of it, and I'll bring that up in just a minute. But with the signs thing, that could be a complete disaster. Could be all kinds of distraction. And any other
Yeah,
team with any other driver, I
yeah,
think signs pro and stays the course. We're going to win races.
yes.
I think Ferrari, they're confident, and they should be. I really see a great year from them, and I being on the papaya side, I still love to see it.
Well, yeah, you can't have the Red Sox without the Yankees. So, yeah, I mean, I get that. And I'm not saying which one of those is the Sox and which one of those is the Yankees, but yeah, Ferrari McLaren is the age old rivalry, man. From the days of way back in Formula One, looking at Nicky Lauda and James Hunt and those guys. So huge deal there with those two teams. But yeah, I think you're right. I think, and not to mention the fact, if for anything else, Sainz driving all the way to the bell as a Ferrari driver,
Mhm.
it's just going to raise his stock when he's trying to find a new team,
Yeah.
which I'm sure he's already actively on the hunt for that. Unless he does what you were saying and takes the gap year to go run a car with his
Now, I
dad.
heard you last week.
Yeah, you did hear me last week.
Mm.
And I backed your play on that. I was like, the more I thought about it, yeah. But anyway, not to get off topic, but yeah, I look forward to seeing Sainz running full bore Ferrari, just as I do seeing Lewis Hamilton. I think that he'll run the distance. I don't think the team will run the distance with him, but I think he'll run the distance and back Mercedes play for that whole season as well, because also a pro.
I think the fact that Lewis Hamilton has the faith in that team tells a lot.
Yeah,
If he's going to make that jump, they must have something to jump into.
yeah.
That says a lot about what Ferrari's got going on. But on the other side is the papaya, the
Okay.
McLarens, and I really don't. They had their shakedown, and it was wet in Silverstone, so they didn't really get much out of it other than it looks fantastic. They got all the confidence in the world. From where they started last year in Bahrain with a P17 and a DNF,
Yeah.
and with the upgrades that they did through the year, and just like that Ferrari winning Le Mans, I said way back that I think McLaren got some mojo when they sent that Solus up the hill at Goodwood.
Okay.
I think they just got some mojo off of that with their upgrades and the moves that Zach Brown made before the season started came into play. Everything started paying off at the end, and they were very competitive.
Yeah.
So they, Lando, he said the other day that they expect to win races.
Wow. I mean, that's throwing it all on the table right there. I mean, I think that's the first non-Red Bull person I've seen say we're expecting to win races.
Yeah.
So that's pretty. I mean, it's ballsy.
Yeah.
So I mean, I look to see what they can do with it. At this point, I would take any win over a Red Bull right now as a thing. Of course, right now there was only one team. There was only one team that did beat them. I don't recall. Do you remember the name? I can't remember.
That was
who that. Oh yeah, Carlos Sainz in the Scuderia Ferrari.
Yeah.
So anyway,
check.
Yeah. But like you said, we had some shakedowns at Silverstone this past week. It was wet there. I still think you can get a lot of good data off the car. It's not moving as fast as you'd like, but all in all, I think you can get base processes and stuff like that. I know David Coulthard, currently an F1 TV analyst and commentator, former driver for Red Bull Racing. I got to hang out with the Red Bull team and see them doing the RB20. Interesting design choices this year with that thing. I think they tried to mimic a Mercedes a little bit and went with a more cut down side pod. I'm not saying it's zero pod, but Adrian Newey's he's a genius, so I'm not going to argue with him.
Yeah,
And then Max was Max when they asked him about the new car, and he's like, "Oh yes, it is excellent. and I will drive the wheels off of this car, and I will win everything. So it was, basic Max Verstappen, fanfare. He's not going to get super excited about anything, but when you're probably the most bored racer in Formula One, I don't know what to tell you. But Mercedes had their test this past week, or their shakedown. One of the things that was cool about this one is Hamilton's been griping about it for years, I guess, but they finally moved his cockpit back. He's been feeling that it's too far forward for a couple years at least, and they finally moved it back. And I saw the pictures of the comparison, and I was like, yep, that's definitely back. So, I don't know how long it will stay that way.
Probably
With
told
Lewis
him,
leaving.
like, there's been a handle right underneath your seat. You just
Yeah.
slide it and scoot.
I don't think that has anything to do with it, but I mean, you can't scoot the whole cockpit. So obviously that's a problem. But talking about Toto, he equated competing against Red Bull as tackling Mount Everest. And one thing I like about Toto, and always have, is he's big time realist, talking about there's no miracles in Formula One. You put in the work, you either get there or you don't. And he's like, we didn't know what car we had week in and week out. We ran tight with Ferrari and McLaren a couple times here and there, and obviously the huge gap to Red Bull. He is optimistic that they can close the gap to Red Bull this year. And he said Red Bull. He didn't say overtaking McLaren or Ferrari. He just said we can pull the gap closer to Red Bull this year. So I can't wait to see how they plan on doing that. I've noticed already some differences in that car, and some have been explained. I know they have like that top gurney flap on the front wing is different.
I think they've changed so much because last year's was such a piece of crap that they just don't know. They don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I still want to wait till I see some footage of actual testing, which is not this weekend, but the following. No, it's this weekend.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get some decent, because I know we won't be able to watch it oddly enough, we don't get to watch it on F1 TV. So that kind of sucks. But, I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with when they're running with the FlowViz paint and all that stuff, and the aero rakes, and see how their aero's looking as they go through their paces at Bahrain. And then, of course, man, the weekend after that, we've got Bahrain, and we got a couple other teams that I want to talk about that have done some shakedown work tonight or this week. Aston Martin. And I don't really want to talk about their run as much as I want to talk about what their big key is going to be going into 2024. So they started out last year strong. Then they fell way off. And from the outside, we really couldn't tell what it was. I mean, other than Lance Stroll really not being a contributing member at all on that team. And there's a great article. I'm not going to go through it tonight, but there was a great article in Formula One talking about how he's changed his training regimen to try to make himself better.
They've got him locked in a room, don't they?
Yeah. You can't go surfing every 20 minutes, buddy. Sorry. So, hold on, I gotta move this arm a little bit. Anyway, and of course they got Fernando Alonso, and I think he's going to be like he always is, man. He's going to be the consummate pro out there and driving whatever they give him to drive. But consistency, I think, will be their key getting through 2024. They've got to start the year and finish the year, in the same place. You know what I'm saying? As far as keeping it together. McLaren's the same way. They started out like literally in the shitter last year.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, I had them predicted to finish 9th or 10th in the constructors. I realize I've eaten those words over and over, and I've never been happier about having to do that.
The first half of the season, you were dead on.
Yeah, they were terrible, man. I wasn't a big fan of some of Zach Brown's facial expressions when they were firing up the new car, or seeing it run. But he's kind of known for that. He doesn't wear his emotions on his sleeve a lot as far as that goes, as far as getting excited about it. But yeah, looks like he's still frustrated about a few things, but it's Zach Brown he's going to be. But then I think my biggest, and I'm not going to go through every team, But my biggest shocker team, I think, this year is going to be Visa Cash App RB for a bunch of different reasons. I think you have a tested driver in Yuki Tsunoda. He's been through the ringer. I know you thought I was going to say Danny Rick just now,
No,
but
I'm
he's
just
been
surprised you said Visa Cash App RB.
yeah.
Thought you weren't going to do
So
that.
I think Yuki. I think you can say Yuki is a somewhat seasoned driver at this point. He's excited about this car, and he normally isn't either.
Mm-hmm.
So he's excited about what it can do. Of course, you got Danny Ricciardo coming on board, and the fact that they've brought that car closer to what Danny Rick was used to at Red Bull, which also brings up some points that other teams have made that they're kind of sick of Red Bull getting to own two teams. And I get that. But just taking it clearly on spec and on the surface, that car is going to be closer to that performance level.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as long as those two drivers can meet the expectation of that car, I think that could be the shocker team of the season. I'm just going to go ahead and call it. So Visa Cash App
That's not
RB
a
midfield.
That's
Midfield
I
contender.
don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. Yeah, the shakedowns, they were all fun, and a lot of the shakedown times used for filming, highlight videos and whatnot. And
Yeah.
anybody listening, just go on Twitter or X or whatever it's called and look up the teams, and they got some really good highlight videos. Every team does, and kind of get you pumped up for the season. There was
Yeah,
one
absolutely.
there was one highlight video, but you missed it. But there is a redacted one from the Scuderia Ferrari.
Oh,
So
jeez.
they posted on Twitter, on X, poetry in motion. This Ferrari pit stop. Only thing is, the rear left tire guy flubbed it, and they put it out there for the public to see. And it was a few hours later. Scuderia Ferrari had to send out sorry about that. Our tech guy was a little excited and sent in the wrong clip. And they
Maybe
put the
they did it
correct
on
one up
purpose.
there.
Maybe they want all the other teams to think that they're the same as they were
Just
last year.
second, the first Ferrari pit stop of 2024 was such a Ferrari pit stop.
I don't know what to be more pissed about, the fact that you brought it up or the fact that we have a term Ferrari pit stop. There's been so many horrible pit stops on other teams. I'm thinking about Lewis Hamilton sitting in the pits for a minute and a half. I'm thinking about Danny Rick and the Red Bull pulling into the pits, and they forgot that he was coming in, so they were just sitting in their seats with no tires ready. So many different ones. But hey, let's key in on Scuderia Ferrari's mishaps. But speaking of that, since you brought it up, I do want to talk about their shakedown this year and kind of what their key for 2024 should be. And I'm sure it's been said everywhere, but if you notice Ferrari's like their qualifying pace is ridiculous, and you know who else's is Haas, and consequently they're both running the same power unit. But then on race day, Haas falls way off because they just don't have the bench strength to handle it, I don't think. But Ferrari falls off because they can't keep their drivers in tires. And, a lot of people were like, well, how come they were so fast in qualifying? They get out there. A lot of people don't realize the fact that a lot of time drivers are told to slow down. It's not because they want to. These engineers are looking at screens that are telling them, hey, dude, you're going to melt these tires.
Mm-hmm.
My point is this: Ferrari needs to get to a point where they're not melting tires and their guys can still push. Other teams have figured it. Hell, even Mercedes figured that out. But nobody has higher tire degradation on the grid than Scuderia Ferrari. So something is causing that because everybody's using the same tire compounds. So I think definitely their key for 2024 is going to be, figuring out a way to keep those tires. So
is it a style of driving?
I don't think it has
Maybe
anything
it's
to
the
do.
driver themselves, or is it something aero on the car?
No, yeah, it's definitely car related. Something's causing them to burn through tires, so they got to figure out what that is. Now, of course, there are tracks out there that are going to burn tires regardless. Luckily, we got rid of Circuit Paul Ricard because that thing can burn some tire. But you've got other circuits out there that are just going to burn through tires regardless of the team. But even then, Ferrari's higher than most. So I think that's really where they need to look going into 2024 is, and hopefully they've done it this past year. And according to Fred, they do have a lot of those kinks worked out. So we'll see how that goes, but definitely excited. All right, man. What else you got? You got any F1 Academy stuff?
A little bit. There. Who was you telling me? What was the girl's name from Saudi Arabia that's going to be a wild card?
Who was that? Let me.
I
don't have a guy in a chair I can just yell at and say, "Hey, man, pull that up."
Yeah.
Latest news.
Rima
Lafali.
Yeah, she's so apparently from what I've read from Saudi Arabia, she's like the driver.
Okay.
That she's pretty legit. She's going in as a wild card. They had a big sponsorship with what was the makeup? Charlotte Tilbury Beauty Products.
Yeah,
going to have their car in there, and they're I think it's going to have some lips and some lipstick all over it. That is going to look real cute. Everybody else is going to have like a livery that's going to kind of match the team that they're
well, still though, I mean,
alongside.
you look at Susie Wolf's comments too, and she's, I get what she's trying to do. She's trying to make F1 a place where young women can feel safe about being talented drivers, and I think that's going to go. I mean, F1 world's just going to have to deal with it. I mean, those sponsorships are broadening to different areas and different scopes and spheres of influence, and you'll have to make it for everybody. You know what I mean? So, I'm not saying we're going to have the
I guess
number
right,
4 Maybelline cover girl McLaren, but so yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. I think they got 8 races.
Yeah.
And they've got some girls that everything I read about them they're pretty legit. So
I mean, and we've seen quite a few already.
What do they run? Are these Formula 4 cars?
Yeah. Yeah. What's that? What's the Block girl's name? Kim Block's daughter.
Leah.
Yeah, because I heard she was looking at it as well. Yeah, and then of course we had the lady from Aston Martin and then what's her name, Bustamante from McLaren. So
yeah, so
then we got that 10-year-old
girl that did
paper boy that's running for Mercedes. So that's crazy.
I think he's going to be trouble. Just look at him like you're going to cause problems. I already know.
Like Nikita Mazepin problems, or
no,
or Nick DeVries. Okay.
I think he may be able to drive. I think he just may. He's got a bratty look to him.
Yeah. So, well, man, listen, we can go ahead and close it out tonight, but we've got winter practice this weekend in Saudi Arabia and then we've got the Bahrain GP coming up. So next Monday's show, obviously we'll talk about anything we've learned from winter testing as we move ready to the race, and we'll do a race preview for Bahrain.
We'll see. Hopefully we'll see. We'll know who Red Bull's team principal is by Monday.
Yeah, I know we didn't cover that tonight, and the plot has thickened on that. But dude, just when I was about to close out the show, here we go. We're going to do another 10 minutes right here. Watch this happen. So I don't want to talk about what's going on with the case because I've promised I would stay out of that and let facts rue the day, regardless of what those are, good or bad. But what I want to talk about is some of the comments we made tonight, talking about Total Wolff and Mercedes and talking about the gap to Red Bull. I don't see how that team's performance is not affected by the loss of Christian Horner. If he goes, I think we'll see teams get closer. I really do. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm way off base. But, he drove that train for so long and so well that if he goes, I think it's going to cause a dip in performance. I really do. I mean, other than the fact that basically Max Verstappen will be running that team regardless.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It'll be his way or the highway for everybody after that.
If he leaves, it'll be like dominoes. I mean, so many things. It affects so many aspects of that team if he just is suddenly not there the next day.
Yeah.
And how do they, especially when they're like, okay, how do we move forward? Do they have a plan in place now?
And I think you're right. It'll be just like dominoes because, listen, when they changed their sauce formula, it just wasn't as good on their pizzas. I know that's not what you meant, but it's still appropriate. I haven't eaten it since I changed their sauce. Yeah, it's just not as good. But yeah, man, and then we've got more to worry about. We're talking about Carlos Sainz trying to find a team, which I don't think he's going to have a problem finding a team. It'll matter whether he wants to go to the team that they want to offer him. But then you also have the Red Bull seat. And I have a hard time believing that this crap didn't come up with Christian Horner unless they already had somebody in mind. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. But plus that team will probably be moving to Austria since Horner was the biggest opponent to that move.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And one of the only ones holding them at Milton Keynes, which is crazy since they just built that crazy new power plant facility all at Milton Keynes. So I just don't understand now the realism and the logic behind any kind of move. But that being said, again, I think the impact of him not being around this sport is going to cause an impact not only on Red Bull and F1 as a whole, but all the other teams as well. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But man, that's all I got.
Yeah, that's really all I've got. I'm ready to see some testing results, and I'm ready to get into racing.
Yeah, you and me both, man. I, just looking forward to, getting us there and getting started on the season and going with our new show format once the season starts. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Maybe get some watch alongs this year. So anyway, absolutely. That's all I got. Everybody enjoy your rest of your week. And it used to be weekend, but now we're like, it's Monday. So enjoy the rest of your week. And tune in next week. Thank you all very much. Have a good one.
Good night.